between those of us that think that individuals and families and nations should be able to determine their own identity, and a group of other people that think it should be worked out by the
elites.
Supposedly smart elites,
Right.
Working out of think tanks and UN meetings and business conferences. And, Elon, he's a complicated person, and I've gotten to know him a little bit, but I mean, what I would say is I think he's seen the dark side of that hyper-wokeism, and his purchase of Twitter is maybe the most significant thing he's done, because he's
I think so too.
basically said ordinary people should be on an equal platform to communicate as elites, and we should stop censoring ordinary folks because the elites demand it.
That was Twitter Files journalist Michael Schellenberger on with Glenn Beck talking about the World Economic Forum, to which Twitter CEO Elon Musk replied, "Citizen journalism is vital to the future of civilization."
These stories are tough because I agree with everything said. Mm-hmm. That would be great. I would like it for Elon Musk to pursue those goals. But elsewhere on the show today, we interviewed Ken Klippenstein about a story that he reported about a malfunctioning autopilot on these Teslas that caused a significant pileup where I think 9 people, including a child, was injured. And because of reporting on that story, he was no longer searchable on Twitter, and his account and the story were suppressed. And in light of that rank hypocrisy, likes of which we've seen now several times in the short tenure that Elon Musk has been on this app, in terms of censoring journalists that were reporting on the whole story about his Elon Musk jet and all of that, some of whom remain off the app, by the way. I don't know how many times things like this can happen while he's still allowed to present himself as someone who's advocating for what I believe sincerely are important speech interests.
Well, as I said when we talked with Ken, that was just inexcusable to do that to his account, even though I had a slightly different take on the actual self-driving car incident. Yeah, he's a rich, powerful person as well, and he has lots of incentives, and some of them will not always be for the platform having rules the way we want them to be. So I think it's his appropriate to continue to call those out.
Alex Jones doesn't get to come back to Twitter, not because of any principled stance that's generally applicable to everyone in the same scenario, but because Elon Musk tragically suffered the loss of a child. Alex Jones lied about the death and murder of children. Therefore, he has a personal grievance with Alex Jones. I don't have any interest in defending Alex Jones. I think that what he did was also unconscionable, but it's just not consistent. Kanye West was kicked off the app. I can't remember if he's back or not. He was kicked off so many times for so many different things. It was a real yo-yo situation, but the ultimate transgression was posting that weird swastika amalgam Star of David thing, which was, yes, offensive. I don't like it. But what is the rationale behind him posting that symbol and getting kicked off the app? Are you not allowed to post symbols on Twitter? There's swastikas and Confederate flags and all kinds of things all over Twitter. If you Google it right now, what is actually the standard being applied here? This is why it cannot come down to putting one individual CEO, billionaire, great man type figure on a pedestal and expecting that genius and consistency is just going to pour out of his mind. There's a reason why we have groups of people, panels, organizations, think tank, like people who are involved en masse and coming up with rules, because this stuff is legitimately hard, and Elon shouldn't want to take all that responsibility on himself in the first place. It's just too much.
Yeah, no, it is hard. I also wanted to talk about something else Schellenberger was pointing out on Twitter. Can we pull up that tweet I asked for? So, he was saying that, so you're treated as a conspiracy theorist if you say that the World Economic Forum just wants people to subsist on eating bugs, which I think there's a grain of truth to people criticizing those who say, that's the only agenda that the World Economic Forum has. That's all they're meeting to do is discuss ways to, shovel crickets into your sandwich. It's not actually what it's all about. However, he did have, so then he got a fact check, I think, from the Associated Press saying, the popular claim that the World Economic Forum wants people to replace meat with bugs is a distorted reference to an article once published on the organization's website that was then deleted. And Schellenberger was, well, why would they delete it if they? And then but then he's pointing out that there's tons of videos on YouTube, other places linked to the World Economic Forum of people, talking about that idea. And look, that is an idea. If people want to do that for sustainable reasons, I don't care. I don't think it should be shoved on anyone. I don't think our gas stove should be replaced, et cetera. If you want to, that's fine. It should just be a voluntary idea or a policy idea that it's come up with and then is put to whatever the relevant decision makers are in the country, as he was saying to Glenn Beck. Like, we still get to, the nation state, the people, the voters get to decide, or even a smaller unit than that. So I thought it was a funny example of another one of those fact checks that actually is further confusing the matter rather than adding any clarity. Yeah. Which is the whole problem with this gatekeeping information that Davos is so beloved of.
Well, let me ask you this, Robby. I mean, we've talked now for several segments today about what to do about misinformation. Obviously, so many people at these panels at Davos are interested in this question, whether or not they engage with it in the way that we think is substantive and good. But do you think there is really actually a problem here, or this is just, as one of the guests at the Gavo panel we discussed earlier, is it just a cyclical thing? The idea of misinformation comes up routinely. There's nothing in particular to worry about here. We're just in a period of realignment because of new forms of media. There's a changing of the guard. We lived through a kind of a unique political moment in 2016. Trump was a unique candidate, and that caused people to have a crisis of faith in institutions that isn't necessarily reflective of anything other than Trump was anomalous and interesting. Or is there, I think, a real issue where there's potentially an information gap that is bigger between different parts of the population than has existed before, and that the nature of social media is causing misinformation to be able to circulate, actual wrong things to circulate at a greater speed with more perceived authority, and that is actually harmful to society?
I think it is unlikely that people in modern society are more misinformed than they were before. The way it's talked about is as if there's been a great, stupefying going on. Like, everyone is so much dumber except for the, latte swilling.
Except for those
New
of
York
us on
Times.
Twitter.
Right. Everyone else is dumber than ever before. I think that's unlikely. I mean, we have to remember that, not even that long ago, a lot of people, most people believed in some form of witchcraft or something.
Sure.
People believed all sorts of kooky things, superstitious things, or conspiracy theories about historical, the moon landing, whatever. That's so common to the American DNA. People are probably better informed than they are today. In fact, I think there's polling results to show that. But it is true that we're more exposed to what other people think than we were before, because before Facebook and social media, it was just harder to know what your neighbors, what everyone around you thought about things.
Sure.
Now we know much better, and we find out that a lot of people know or think some things that are wrong and dumb. I don't think it's greater than it was before. I think it's probably less.
We just know more about each other's beliefs.
We know more about each other's beliefs.
About it.
And we're horrified by what we're learning. And look, I think it's undoubtedly true that there is bad information spreading online, and there will be examples of times where that has caused people to do something bad for their health or make a bad decision because they absorb bad information. Right now there's been a lot of going around about heart attacks and heart attack deaths, and is it linked to the COVID vaccine?
He died suddenly.
Yeah, and then you looked, people I've tried, Jesse Singal looked at this, Mike Cernovich looked at this. This is a figure that is pretty popular in, I would say, right-wing contrarian circles, and you can read his Substack. There'd be probably a lot of people trust him. Read his Substack. He looked at this and concluded what Jesse Singal concluded, what so many others, is that a lot of these people in this list of supposed heart attack deaths, they didn't even die of heart attacks. They died in car crashes. They just it's bad. It is bad information. So I think that is a problem. But the solutions being put on the table that we're just going to restrict. We're going to deputize some authority to decide what we're allowed to see and to read. Just goes awry so easily, and has gone awry. I mean, the fact checkers on Facebook are terrible organizations that get things wrong all the time.
Yeah, I think there is something to the idea of having enough ideological diversity within a political community that you can have someone that's considered to be a trusted source correct within the community. Yeah. The fact that there is a Cernovich or a Jesse Singal or someone who can push back is important. I guess the worry is what happens when people are so siloed and communities are so homogenous that doesn't happen. And I do worry, I do think that there is more, frankly, ideological diversity, for what it's worth, on the right. And we see this with what has been happening in Congress, than there is among the liberal left. I think the left is very much siloed and small and out of the public view. And so the big mass of liberals, oh boy, I mean, I was listening to an episode of Pod Save America last night, and it's just really incredible stuff. It's just sometimes I forget how different and how out of touch from my obviously subjective perspective they are about political events like the McCarthy speaker's race. And I worry about what that means. What that means for political movements, what that means for big populist coalitions to be able to come together and actually focus on the enemy that I think we both agree on, which is genuine corporate elites that are bipartisan. And so I don't know, I think it's worth, I'm glad we're talking about it. It isn't easy. I never wanted to make it sound like, if I'm critical of Elon or anybody else, that it's easy.
I always want to avoid the excessive, I think, pessimism of the things are worse than ever, disinformation, we can't grapple with it. Like even the siloing problem, like being siloed is probably the natural condition of human beings. Like most human beings,
we're not supposed to know this many people.
No, you lived in a village, you knew your family and your neighbors, and you hated people who didn't look like you and didn't follow your beliefs. You hated them. You hated people in the other village. You wouldn't have even known about people in other countries. You would have hated them. Social media broadly has exposed people to more experiences. It has had an unsiloing effect. If you look at it at a historical time frame. And I just think that's important to keep in mind as people, gather, as the elites gather to decide what new regulations are going to be forced on us.
Yeah, it's true. Otherwise, I would never have all this access to these amazing Korean interior design videos that I love so much. All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.